40% of our Earth's landmass is covered by grasslands. And talking about biodiversity, they have about 25% of key biodiversity areas happen in grasslands. So they're fundamental ecosystems that support life. On top of that, about 30% of the carbon capture requirements that we need should be and can happen into grasslands. By that fundamental photosynthesis cycle of grasses through the energy of the sun are capturing carbon dioxide, and they're bringing that carbon into the soil. Now, one part that we really like about grasslands, and it goes back to the problem that we're solving, is that it allows us to provide a diversification of risks and investment profiles towards our investors. Grasslands have different risk-adjusted returns than a forest, for example. They can be, from a CapEx and an OpEx requirement, a lower amount of capital can flow to them on a per hectare or acre basis, but they can be very resilient into capturing that carbon for many, many years. Once a grassland starts to perform, for example, in the case of a risk of fire, most of the carbon is captured underground. And so it makes grasslands very resilient if they're regenerating. When they're not regenerated, that transition point of a grassland is towards desertification. So, for example, last year, one of the COPs was about desertification, and really what's in the barrier of desertification is always a grassland. So in many, many locations that around our planet that should be forest, even its land restoration activities actually begin as a grassland, because that's the ecological restoration escalator that we have to go through to make sure that, for example, that soil moisture potential starts to increase, that the balance of bacteria and mycorrhizal fungi is increasing and is in the right balance to then be able to support trees. And so grasslands are just this amazing opportunity that continues to be underrepresented in investment portfolios. As many of our customers now know, it's a really interesting asset to have in a nature-based portfolio or in a CDR, carbon dioxide removal portfolio. And just to share, for example, some of our starting points of building a book on investments, one of our first projects has achieved an IRR of 50%. I'm not saying that that's what we expected, that's not what we modeled, but what happened is that these assets have such an interesting profile that what we're starting to see is a secondary market forming, which I really think is very exciting towards 2025 and beyond, on how this secondary market can start to ramp up, where assets are changing between hands through asset managers. In our case, it was an asset manager from Miami selling to an asset manager from the UK. And the IRR comes from the fact that rather than holding it for 10 years, is coming into 2. And so that secondary market, what we're starting to achieve on grasslands and that resilience that it comes, is a really good portfolio strategy to many of our investors.